Lesser previously, best of Ezreal here, and now the best of Bologna. Alan ZQ is the first Riftbound European Regional Qualifier champion.
And in what manner? Great sportsmanship from these friends. They're hugging it out. Everyone is cheering for Alan ZQ. This has been Ezreal Masterclass. This has been Riftbound Masterclass. He is showing how great he is, and he's cheering on his friend SavvyQ and Alan ZQ. That was truly a final of all time.
Sportsmanship to the end as
All right, guys. Yes, Alan was able to take the regionals over in Europe with an Ezreal, but not only that, we also saw that an Aurora deck was able to make it into the finals. Now we are going to be diving into these deck lists that were the top decks of these regionals and what this ended up looking like. But guys, I am absolutely just blown away right now with that finals there. Oh man, that was just a lot of excitement. So what are these deck lists? What are the gameplays? And what else can we expect from Alan as we continue to see his competition road? All of that and more we're going to be diving into right now. So again, exactly like the commentator said, this was an absolute masterclass at what Alan is able to do with Ezreal, and the fact that he was able to win it all. I mean, if you watch any gameplay, watch that game 1 in the finals right there. Because, I mean, you look at the board state that Aurora was able to build, and you're just like, how is Alan going to be able to come back from this? But man, you see the lines that he has, and you see what he is able to do. And the fact that he was able to come back and win that, something where a lot of people would look at that and be like, yeah, this game is over, let's just go game 2. And then to be able to come back and win it, that is going to be one of the biggest games, one of my favorite games to even watch at this point. Just an absolutely great gameplay there. So with that, we are going to be diving into his deck list first. But again, I just got to say, I am very impressed with how this regionals went. And it is very different than what we expected to see in a lot of ways. Now, the big thing here that I do really want to point out, first and foremost, of course, is going to be that day 2 conversion. That's going to be the first big thing here. Now, with the day 2 conversion, of course, we did see a ton of Dravens that were able to make their way into this meta. That is something very big to see, but at the same time, 0 made it into the semifinals. And so there is a lot of fierce competition here. There is a lot of high-level gameplay. And so really it feels like it could be anyone's game. And if you go back and even see a lot of the gameplay, you see what a lot of these competitors have said on X, and it really does come down to those final moments in each game, who ended up maybe getting just those bit more of answers and being able to deal with their opponent's board states. Because again, when you look at card games, you're able to see certain lines that you're able to take, but to be able to make the most optimal play time after time, game after game, after hours of playing, that is where the true champions are able to be found. And I mean, again, to be able to see Alan make that finish, I am just absolutely blown away here. Now, again, Ezreal still had a really good day 2 conversion. 18% of the field was still Ezreal of that top. Now, of course, at the same time, the thing to keep in mind was that they ended up playing, you needed to be able to get 18 points or 6 rounds won to be able to make day 2. That's the biggest thing. Then after that, they ended up playing up until 13 rounds to be able to find the top 8. That's tough. That's a huge cutout at that point. And so something that we definitely need to be watching out for a little bit more, because to make it to that point can be so incredibly difficult. But again, even on this set too, you look here and you see 3 Misfortune decks that were still able to win. Now that's only 9% of the field, but even still, that is something to be keeping an eye on. We even had more Victors that were able to make it, and a Viktor that was able to make it into the semifinals, which we will be taking a look at his deck list later in the game too. But again, really cool to be able to see the diversity here, that even after 15% of the field on day one being Draven, Irelia, Ezreal, all these answers here that you still are able to see, and Azir that was able to make it into day two. That Rumble, 2 Rumbles were able to make it there. Heck, even 2 Lee Sins. So some really crazy stuff, and even like a Teemo, or 2 Teemos ended up making it, one of them being Speci, and we'll take a look at his deck list too, because that is very unique. And then you, after hours of playing, you are finally able to make it into that top cut. And guys, look at this and just, I'm impressed here. Now, a lot of people are a little bit annoyed because they take a look and they're like, oh wow, 90% of the field is purple. Okay, sure, fine. That can be your complaint, all that you want, perfectly valid. But at the same time, you're still looking and you see that, yeah, we have the Ezreals, we have the Dravens, we have, but also some pretty good surprising here with like a Viktor and then an Aurora MF. And then not only that, the Aurora was able to then go in and make it into the finals and still stand a good chance. Now, of course, again, Alan, just absolute masterclass on how to be able to run that finals match and even to run his deck, because you take a look at his deck list here and it is so incredibly complicated. But I do want to say also, Ghost Driver, great play right there with the Viktor. Had a very hard matchup where he did have to go against an Aurora deck, and being able to do so, and having in game 3, it was a very sad loss where he was able to see 3 Mind Splitters against his deck in the first 3 turns of Aurora. That's very difficult to ever have to come back from, and very well still could have taken the match, but the Aspirant's Climb in game 3 was the killing blow at that point. So even still, though, very impressed with how things were able to go here. Now, likewise, I do want to say that this game 1 here with Alan is definitely one to watch, because at some point you're able to take a look and see that your opponent has 2 dazzling Auroras out on the field. And again, most competitors will take a look at 2 dazzling Auroras and be like, what do I do in this case? And that's a very valid question, definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on, because again, you normally think that, yeah, it's basically over at this point. And you take a look and you see in the main deck here, now of course in the side deck there is that gear destruction, but you take a look at the main deck and it's like, well, how would you be able to deal with 2 Auroras with this kind of deck list? And that's a very valid question at that point, because you're going to be having to deal with the volley bears, and on top of that too, the Mind Splitters that can continue to bombard your hand. Now, at the same time, you're still able to go in and find ways to be able to deal with your opponent's board states, but then when they're able to get things out with like, the shovel coming in and being able to maybe get the Mind Splitter back in from the grave and then again ping your card or something like that, it can be so difficult to have to deal with here. And so again, though, you're taking a look at this board state, and this is what Alan had to deal with. And if you would have told me at this board state that Alan still took this game 1, I would be absolutely questioning, how is that even possible here? And so, again, we're able to see maybe a little bit of an answer coming in with the Rebuke, able to be hard casted at that point. Now, the Vex is going to be making that a little bit cheaper. And again, I do like, he runs 3 Vexes in the main deck. And that is something that not a lot of people anticipated. That is not something that a lot of people thought was to be considered here. And now you're seeing just exactly why these Vexes are able to make such an impact here. And it is because of the abilities that you are able to utilize here. Now, both those volley bears are gone. They do not have to be dealt with anymore. That is a huge tell right there. And then not only that, the answers that Alan has in hand at this point is just absolutely insane. Now, he does go with a bit of his regular build here, where he is going to be able to play, for example, he has the 2 Rashas, he has the Miracle Core, where you are running 3 of the Seals, 3 of the Called Shots, but only 1 Ezreal. And that can be a bit of a risk and reward play right there too, because you take a look and you are running the Morbid Return, so you might be able to get it back. But if you want to maybe get the Thousand Tail back, if you maybe want to get a Mind Splitter back, whatever else you might want to get back, you're more than able to. But again, if you lose that one Ezreal, then it feels like that a lot of your deck can just fall apart. And if you are going against those Dravens, then it can be something where you're like, all right, well, what do I do about this? How do I then go about dealing with this board state? And again, rightfully so, because this can be something that is just so difficult to have to deal with. I do like, though, what Alan was able to do in this situation. You're able to see even like the chance to be able to play Bellows Breath essentially out for free, you know, and then that's something that a lot of people didn't even anticipate as being possible. But being able to find those kinds of answers is just absolutely insane. Now, likewise, of course, we now see Seb's Aurora list and what it was able to do. Now, there's a lot of gameplay out there because he was followed pretty much the entire road to the semifinals, and so you get to see a lot of great gameplay here and see what is built here. Now, you see only 5 units. Volibear and Mind Splitters. Otherwise, you have a lot of really great card draw here. You are going to be using the called shots. That is going to be an expensive play right there, but you have the ramp to be able to get you right back into the action. Not only that, you have so many different abilities now to be able to find your Auroras, the called shots to be able to get there, the stacked decks to be able to dig that much deeper. Then not only that, you have the Obelisk of Power to give you that bit more ramp early game so that you can get out your dazzling Auroras. Likewise, you have Sigil of the Storm, which is going to be also mitigating your opponent's progression because now they have to sacrifice a rune each and every time. And I just got to say, I am such a fan here of what is able to be done, how this board state is able to be created, and then just being able to ping your opponent's cards time and time again. You get the hand knowledge with Sabotage. You get to take out and put at the bottom of the deck a non-unit. And then on top of that hand knowledge alone is going to be paramount. But then on top of that, then you're able to get to the Dazzling Aurora and play out a Mind Splitter, and then you're able to just hit the hand further. And you look and it's like, holy, yeah, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with this kind of gameplay? And rightfully so, it's a great question to have to ask because this is so difficult to have to deal with at this point. And I'm very impressed that we had an Aurora Misfortune be able to make it into the semifinals, especially when the odds were stacked against the Aurora here with how much gear destruction there is. Great gameplay here from Seb. Love what he was able to do. And again, I'm going to be curious to see what kind of meta changes are going to be made with both these deck lists now being able to make it into the finals and Aurora being so close on being able to claim victory at that top spot. So great job from Alan on being able to defeat it. But still, even on the other end, though, we did have 2 decks that ended up making it into the top 8. At the same time, though, the hard part about that is that Alan and the Milan Drift ended up going against each other in the top 8. That really sucks, but I still am a huge fan of this deck list. It does stack up really well against the Miracle builds, and even against a lot of the Draven builds here. Love the one down well in the deck. You're seeing 2 Ezreals, and then otherwise kind of the same core that we've always seen, where you do see the 3 Seals, the 2 Rasas, and then, you know, everything else. The 1 Ride the Wind, the 1 Rebuke, the 3 Fizzes. So you're really looking at trying to get stuff back out from the grave to be able to utilize again, whether that is a Rebuke, a Ride the Wind, even like a stacked deck if you happen to be getting in a little bit of trouble. You do see in this case a Last Rites, the Shovel in this deck. to be able to get units back out too. So if you do end up losing your Ezreal, well, you can play out the shovel, be able to immediately play him back out. If you lose your Rasas, then you are able to conquer or hold and be able to immediately play it right back out. So I do really like the dynamics that this deck is able to utilize. Also, not only that, you don't ever feel bad about discarding the signature spell here for Ezreal, because Fizz is going to be immediately able to use it. And then not only that, you can go and play a Fizz out, target the Arcane, he blips, comes right back in, and then you can play something like your Wages of Pain to be able to deal another 3 damage. And so, again, just a huge fan of this deck and what it's able to do here, because, I do think that this is a step in the right direction. The big difference here, though, between Alan and, the Manla Drift is going to be that he had a lot more of the answers that Alan is able to dish out. I think the Vexes are going to be such a big difference maker there. And Ezreal is a very complicated deck that you need to be able to pilot. There's so much game knowledge that you have to have at this point that it can be such a difficult matchup for you to have to go in against. And that's going to be one of the hardest parts. What do you do then when, you have to spend hours and hours and days of playtesting, of fine-tuning a deck list here? Now, both these competitors have been able to do so incredibly well with their deck lists. At the same time, though, wow, when you see the knowledge that needs to be had here, we'll see how Ezreal is going to be able to do at maybe your local Nexus Nights and things like that. But this deck isn't for the faint of heart. That's going to be the biggest thing here. It is going to be a very tough deck to pilot, but one that can be very rewarding once you get the hang of it. Now, a lot of you know that I am a huge proponent of Viktor. He's been one of my favorite decks. He's the one signature that I have pulled from Origins, or in general. That's the only signature I've ever pulled. But I gotta say, I really like what this deck list is trying to do. It is such a fun and very special build, because it's taking things that a lot of different Victors have been trying to do and takes bits and pieces from each of those, except for maybe, of course, the Jace and Vanguard Armory combo piece, which, is very nice when that goes off, but isn't necessarily one that generally lands as strong as you would maybe think. But still, even with all of this, I love that the Riptide Rex is included in this build, because it can be so powerful, especially when it is accompanied with Void Gate. That is going to be one of the best combos that you are able to do, because that 7 damage can take out Mind Splitters, can take out pretty much any unit that is out on the battlefield. And that's going to be one of the best effects that you are able to utilize. Not only that, there's 2 components where Viktor really can struggle, and the one is going to be with how much power this deck pulls. That's going to be one of the hardest parts, is that you have so many spells and even units that will cost you 2 power in that case. And so it's like, you really are going to be falling a little bit behind if you aren't able to get a lot of gold generation or, play out some seals. Well, he's gone for the gold generation and has stayed away from the seals, and I really like what he's been trying to do. And he's really he's really main decking a lot of options here, especially with something like Pickpocket, which will be able to destroy your teammate's gold and be able to make one. But even better yet, you are able to destroy your opponent's seals. And I think that's really what Pickpocket is used here for. And this deck list really feels like more of a Draven killer here, rather than, the matchup that he ended up losing against, which was Aurora. And it is like already Viktor does struggle with the card draw. But then when you go against Aurora and they're able to, 1, get out the Aurora, and then 2, find Mind Splitter after Mind Splitter after Mind Splitter and just bombard you with destroying your hand, it's like, all right, well, what can I do at this point? And so that's going to be one of the hardest parts here, is it feels like Ghoster Driver has figured out exactly what needs to be done in so many of the meta matchups, but it feels like also it's like none of us would have expected to go against an Aurora deck, especially an MF Aurora, that was able to make it all the way to the finals. But still, this is just such a powerful deck, and I really do like the combo of Bellows Breath with Imperial Decree. There's a lot that can be done there, a lot of damage, entire board wipes in that case that can just devastate any opponent, especially Miracle Draven. If they're not necessarily prepared for or have a hard bargain, then Imperial Decree and Bellows Breath will just wipe the board, and there's very little that they can do to be able to rebuild their board state. And so again, just really like this. Even the one-time warp, it can be your almost get out of jail free card, even though it is far from being free at that 10 energy cost. But even still, if you're able to get to like that 6-7 points and you're able to then time warp, it can be something so powerful because you're going to have a lot of units out on the board. They're going to be very low-minded units outside of the Riptide and the Thousand Tail, but even still, there's a lot here that is able to get the job done and to take the game to your opponents, and it is why one of my favorite decks to be able to watch is Viktor. Now, with that being said, again, it was a big struggle here with going against the Aurora matchup, just mainly due to the fact that it's like, well, you're able to get a lot of units out on the board, and it feels like a race. And even still, with having the game 3 that this went to, it felt like that we had the opportunity to be able to still win this game, but it was that Aspirant's Climb game 3 that really was that hindrance there, and just made the game just long enough to where it was so hard. But also finding the 3 Mind Splitters in game 3, it's like, what can you do about that? When you destroy a hand so much, very few decks are able to maintain that type of board state there. And so it is going to be such a grind in these matchups. And it'll also be interesting to see if maybe now we start to see another climb with Aurora. If that's going to be maybe something that we see make more appearances now in the Nexus Nights. But also, Viktor almost made it to the finals here. This is a top 4 match. And if you would have told me that Ghoster Driver would have been able to make it so far with a Viktor, I mean, I would believe you initially, but also it's like, you know, it just doesn't feel like the Viktors have been able to be properly represented in all of the matchups for Origins and Spiritforged alike. And it's like, all right, guys, here we are. Viktor might be that option and something that we can definitely keep an eye on. And I gotta say, I'm very excited to see what is going to be coming up next as we continue to get into these gameplays. Now, next, I want to also talk to you guys about the Dravens. Now, this is something that was very unique here because Draven is very powerful. You know, everyone's been saying that Draven is that tier 0. We saw the brackets. We saw how many were able to make it into the top 8. But then you take a look and you see that 0 Dravens made it to top 4. That's a little crazy and something to consider. Now, at the same time, this top 8 over in Europe was absolutely stacked. You take a look at the competition that has been able to make it. You have Alan, you have Randy, you have Prismaticism, you have Market, you have, you know, I mean, I could keep telling you about how many, how tight the competition was here at this regional qualifier, and it's just absolutely amazing. And so when you're finally able to make it into that top 8, and you take a look at the field and you see just what you have to deal with, it makes complete sense why Draven was able to make it so far, but also why they fell short here in the top 8. At the same time, it was anyone's game, and it very well could have been that Marcus, Prismaticism, or Randy were able to make it to that top 4 or to the finals. But I mean, it's just like the fierceness of this competition cannot be overstated enough. That's going to be the big thing. So when you take a look at this build, this is what is known more as a mid-range Draven in this case, and it is a very powerful build at that. Now, I really do like what Marcus is able to do here. with his current build at least, the Thunder Song are going to be very commonly ran in the main deck at this point. I mean, you've seen how many Dravens were able to make it into the top cut, how many even showed up to the regionals in general, but even with all of that, you're able to still take a look and see, you know, how fierce this competition is going to end up being here. I really do like the Forerunners. I think that they are going to be one of the most powerful cards in the main deck that you are able to utilize. You can then even, you know, go for a siding in of a third one. A lot of people are keeping one in the back, or they're even just playing with all three in total, just because of the impact in these matchups that they're able to make. But you take a look, and it is such a difficult bombardment that you're able to have to deal with. I mean, you have, you know, not only the fighter flights and the overzealous fans, which is basically 6 fighter flights that you're going to be having in the deck, but not only that, you have to be watchful of the tide turners, which can add a whole different dynamic to your matchups here, which is very difficult to have to deal with here. It's like, well, what are we going to be able to do to try to get around these types of gameplay to get things done here? And yeah, you would be absolutely right about that, because it just sometimes will feel like there is an absolute wall that is in front of you here, and especially if Draven is able to go first, it can be such an uphill climb. You have to be worried about the Kaisas being accelerated in, the Dariuses that are able to just be played in, and you have, like, you know, the Darius played, and then you just stack deck. And just like that, the Darius is readied up and then able to attack in. And not only that, if the Darius ends up staying out for a turn, then you can just have him attack into a battlefield. It gets fighter flighted back out. You play 2 cards, which is really easy for this deck to be able to do, and then you immediately just attack right back in. And that's going to be one of the best ways that you're able to combat against Dravens in this case, is that you're able to just continually swing back and forth in with these with these units time after time. Not only that, when you do also have to take care of those dangerous units, you have things like Rebuke that is able to put in so much work. And so, again, I just am a big fan of what Draven is able to do. But also, again, when we take a look where a lot of people are very worried about this tier 0 state, rightfully so, it is definitely something that we want to take a look at. But even still, I'm very curious to see if Draven is going to start making adjustments for the rest of these matchups, or if we're going to continue to stay at, you know, the Draven v Draven type mid-range matchups or the Miracle Dravens without necessarily having to worry about these outliers. I mean, again, the meta at our local Nexus nights, at our skirmishes, are going to look much different than what we maybe play at our regionals, and so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But the regional deck list, I could see starting to make a different change, especially maybe as we go into Vegas. Now, next, of course, is going to be Randy's deck list. Now, of course, Randy, he was able to have just such a great showing, all things considered, and more importantly, he was able to go against some very formidable foes and had also a really great run over in China. He was able to get 4th place with a Sivir, and is just such a competitive player, knows this game backwards and front, and able to get so much done. And I am a huge fan of this deck list. Now, one thing that you guys should note here is that this is what is called Miracle Draven here. A little bit different than what, regular Draven is. Midrange is really more fixated on getting into the battlefields and holding them down, whereas Draven here is able to just go super wide, play a lot of cheap stuff out, and then be able to utilize the board state to their advantage. And I mean, you're still seeing cards like where he is playing 2 overzealous fans, he is playing 3 fighter flights. But then you take a look and you see some fun choices here where you are only running, like, for example, one Tide Turner, but you are running still only two Seal of Discord. So there's some differences here. Even one Rasa in the main deck is very different than what we've seen in other Miracle builds. And I'm curious to see even if Randy might be changing his deck list. We know that he is going into Vegas this following week, and what differences, what changes he's going to be making as we go into this next matchup. It's definitely one that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because I think that Randy is going to be able to have just another very powerful run into this next regionals in the following week. He continues to impress, being able to make it into the top 8 multiple times now, and we'll see. It's not necessarily a matter of if, but when Randy is going to be able to make that top cut again. I do want to state that I am going to be curious on the differences here between Piercing Lights and Falling Stars. Piercing Light is able to deal 8 damage instead of 6, though you do have to fork it differently. And it does have the caveat of needing to target a unit in a battlefield first. So you got to be a little bit careful on how you repeat that, because sometimes if you take out the one unit in a battlefield, it can set you back at that point, because you might have to ping your own unit. So something that you might have to be a little bit careful out. Whereas Falling Star doesn't necessarily have to. And at the same time, though, I really do think that Piercing Light might start to see its climb and representation a little bit more in these deck lists. And again, I still want to say that I think that we are still going to see a climb on Draven, but I think the standard of where people are thinking that it is just unable to be defeated is something that we need to start to stray away from. It is a beatable deck. Miracle or otherwise, it is a very beatable deck. We just need to make the adjustments and to know how to best prepare for those said matchups. Now, at the same time, this is still a very difficult thing, and especially if you give the Draven the ability to go and set up their board state, if they win the die roll, then it can be a very difficult matchup at that point. But even still, there's a lot that you need to watch out for and prepare for. But once you understand that matchup, it can be something that you want to keep an eye on, but still understand that you're not going to just immediately be 0-2'd here. So I really like this deck list and what we are able to see here. Now, next, of course, I want to be able to talk in particular about Sivir here. Now, yes, Sivir didn't necessarily have the best showing here. What I mean by that is that, yeah, we weren't able to get that top 8 finish with Sivir, but we were still able to get some really good showings in general. The big thing that I really like about Sivir here that I think we need to discuss is that it has, usually the Miracle build is how you go about that, but at the same time, you are still watching for that diversity. You're still watching for the insane card draw to be able to set up your board, and then the power that also comes with orange. And normally, this is a little bit different than what I've seen in other deck lists. I mean, again, we saw Randy's deck list over in China that was very different than this one. And also very curious to see only one Punch First here. Very interesting choice there. I love Punch First. I play 2 in my Sivir deck personally. But again, I really do like what No Veggies has been able to build here. And the showing that he was able to make. Definitely was one to watch out for. And at the same time, you're able to have just so much card draw. You're able to dig through your deck. You're able to get so many answers going for you. Now, there is a big debate also on how many seals you want to be running here. A lot of people are a proponent of running 3 just to have that higher guarantee that you are going to be able to make it to that point. You know, that you're able to find that seal. At the same time, though, one of the hardest parts is going to be the fact that you need to figure out how to then get around it if you end up not finding it. because again, that power cost can be something to really hurt you. Yes, Sivir's ability to be able to dig around and find those answers is very helpful, but at the same time, you might just be finding yourself in a little bit of an uphill battle there if you're not careful. And the Nocturnes can be a huge risk, but also a very good payout at that point if you are able to find them. If you top deck them, it hurts. It really sucks to be able to top deck at that point. That's one of the last things that you want to have, but at the same time, it happens. You just roll with it. You see what you can do. But I gotta say, I am an absolute huge fan of what Sivir was able to do and what No Veggies was able to utilize here with his deck list. Very impressed with what he's able to do. Again, I'm going to be curious if we want to see maybe Edge of Night taking that step back a little bit, because I don't know if it's necessarily going to continue to have its place here. I do also really like the fizzes, though, because it makes it to where only having one punch first isn't the end of the world, that you are going to be able to find it again and utilize it when you need it. Now, that's going to be sometimes the 2 power cost of punch first is going to be a very difficult situation for you to find yourself in sometimes, but even still, Sivir does help mitigate that cost, and it gives you such a better chance at mitigating the power cost there. Also, not to say that the legend ability of the Sivir is great, but also just having the champion that is able to move from one battlefield to another when you just sacrifice 2 power, that can be gold or otherwise. And so then immediately you're able to combat and go right over to the other battlefield and have a lot of really awesome answers on scoring potentially 2 points every single round. And so, again, it's something that I really like. I still don't know how I necessarily feel about running Nocturne. I mean, you see here that it's able to be played out successfully. But again, also just even taking up that 3-card slot, while it is very powerful to have, it can be something that could be to your detriment as well, especially if you end up just bricking and you top deck 2 of them when you would rather just have them be played out for a power cost. You got to be very careful there. So again, definitely something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, but I am a huge fan of Sivir. I still feel like it needs to go through a little bit of growing here and figuring out the correct balance. But again, it is just so fun to be able to play. Now, next, of course, I do really like, I really like Fiora. Now, I do feel like that she has taken a step back in this meta, and rightfully so. It sucks because I want her to be good. I do. But the hard part is, it is such a difficult matchup here, where if you are able to take out your Fioras and you're not able to accelerate out your units, if you go against Kai'Sa, for example, and you find yourself just going through major destruction of your units, it can be so difficult to try to have to come back from this. That's something that I just have a difficulty, I have a struggle with here. But even still, I love this deck. I also love that you have, for example, like the 2 Akshans. That can be such a big difference maker in so many matchups where you are going to be seeing what it's able to do against Dravens, being able to take the spinning axe, being able to take a dazzling Aurora. It's able to provide you so much value here that you're able to do. You're able to just have a whole lot of fun with this deck. Sometimes if you do miss your gear, you are going to be falling short. That's going to be probably the hardest part about this. You do not want to miss your BF sword, because then immediately your unsung hero is just not going to be able to get mighty very easily whatsoever. You don't want to miss your signature spell, because then if they play out, something that absolutely just destroys your board state, then there's just nothing that you can do about it. The biggest thing also that really is difficult about this matchup too is that you don't have a lot of card draw. You're hoping that you're able to get a Death Grip. You're hoping that you're able to get a Hidden Blade. That's going to be getting you some decent card draw, but even then, sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's enough. And so this deck just falls more and more behind, especially if you have that heavy removal, which a lot more decks are putting in. I mean, we saw the Piercing Lights, we've seen the Falling Stars, we've seen Kaisas that just bombard you with spell after spell, but I still really like what this deck list is able to do, and I think that maybe with a little bit more support, maybe if in next set that yellow is able to really get some good power, that Fiora is able to make that climb. I'm still at the debate with myself on if Fiora Hook is the better deck compared to just regular Fiora, but in this case, you know, we've had one regular Fiora that was able to get second place in China. We had Fiora Hook that was able to get second place in China, and then we now have this deck that was able to do incredibly well. I mean, it was able to go 8-2, able to make it into round 11, and then just wasn't able to break into that top 8. That is such a hard field to break into, especially with so many people playing. But even still, very impressed with what they were able to do here. Now, likewise, one thing that I do want to keep in mind about a lot of this too is that this meta seems like it is just a lot more healthy. Yes, I know people are talking about that, the wanting to get those best of metal cards. Very sought after, very valuable. Also, if you even just want to collect it, very good to see here. And as we take a look at these last couple of deck lists, you know, yeah, people probably did end up playing Rek'Sai, ended up playing Teemo to try to go for those best of cards. But even still, they were able to do really good with both those decks respectfully. Now, at the same time, I gotta say, I really like what Rek'Sai was able to bring to the table here. It definitely feels like it could be that special deck that could really surprise your opponent. Is why we've seen, I mean, heck, Phoenix went from near $8 to $10 up to about $35 now because so many people are believing in Rek'Sai. Also, people might just be buying it out too, but still very impressed. And you look at the spell slinging removal that you're able to see here. You see 2 Piercing Lights, you see 3 of the Falling Stars. Not only that, you also see 2 Thundersong, which could be very devastating to a lot of opponents. I mean, if Irelia might not be able to play anything after Thundersong comes out, and then you're able to just take care of take care of her on the board, awesome. Not only that, I really love the Under Titan. When you see that off of your Rek'Sai Legend ability, and you're able to just add 2, or if you play it and you're able to add 2 might to all your units out there, that could be a big difference maker in your gameplay. Also, even if, you know, you see it and then you decide to play it, you're paying 4 and a power to be able to play it, which is really cool. Not only that, the signature spell that that Rek'Sai is able to utilize, I mean, she has such a powerful ability there. For 2 and a power, you're able to then, you know, look at the top 2 cards, keep 1, you know, and play the other at that point. And it's like, okay, and it costs 2 less when you play out that card. So again, really like what this deck is able to do. I also love that we are able to see, you know, a way to be able to accelerate your units out maybe a little bit faster. 3 Seals of Rage, definitely understandable here. This is a very power-hungry deck. You see the different spell removals. You see how many different options you have. The last thing you want is to be able to see a unit from the top of your deck with your legend ability and then not be able to play it. That's something that's very difficult. Also with this Rek'Sai champion, the thing should be noted too, that you can then go in and see that you can accelerate out your units. Well, guess what? You don't accelerate them out for free. You still have to pay that acceleration cost. And so that's going to be, you know, essentially a, you know, rune and a red power. So it's like, you know, that's a lot to be added at that point. And so, again, I want to be able to watch what Rek'Sai is able to do at this point, because I am such a fan of what this deck is able to do. It really sucks that it wasn't able to win this deck or this matchup here in round 12. Really sad to be able to see. But then you're able to take a look earlier in the gameplay, and I mean, the aggression, when you have an open battlefield, for example, that is able to do a lot, It can be something to continue to bombard your opponent time and time again. And then with the Conquering, okay, then you're able to maybe build up your board. Maybe you're able to find a spell removal. And that's something that I just really think we need to watch out for against Rek'Sai. Now, next, of course, I do want to about is going to be this awesome deck of Teemo. Now, if you would have told me that we had a Teemo that was going to be going 8-1, I would have been raising a brow to that, to say the least. And Speci is just, I mean, first off, he's a great content creator. If you haven't seen his stuff, highly recommend giving him a follow on YouTube. Give him a subscribe in that case, you know, because it is just such a fun, he does a lot of really good content for both Lorcana and Riftbound alike. And then being able to even go into Riftbound with a deck that's maybe a little bit underutilized, definitely isn't there in the sense of at the same power that you would normally see for like Draven, you know? I mean, you see Draven and you're like, oh yeah, that deck is gonna win. But you see Teemo and you're like, a lot of times, you know, when you sit across from a Teemo, you're like, oh yeah, this is an easy win. But no, Speci was able to then go in and then prove that there's still a lot here with this deck. And not only that, this is a very different build than what I would initially maybe think that this deck list would be having here. You know, I think the Thousand Tail Watcher, definitely. I do like also the stacked decks and things like that. Very good uses there. And then we take a look and we're like, wait, you're running Nocturnes? Okay, yeah, I can see that. But then seeing things like the drop border, you're seeing things like Pit Crew, and then all of that gear and gold destruction, and even like the 3 Ezreals. And I'm a fan. This is a really cool deck list, something very different than what I would have maybe initially thought. I mean, we didn't even see any Ember Monks in this deck list. Whereas it's like, well, where is that? That is one of the most powerful cards for Teemo, and Speci's not running a single one. But at the same time, you can't argue with when you see those types of results there. So just really impressed with what this deck is able to do. He did go a little bit of the miracle route, touching on things like the Called Shot, the Ezreals, the 3 stacked decks, you know, rightfully so. But then you take a look and you're like, well, there's also no seals. He didn't play a single seal Discord. But yet he's able to create so much gold. He's able to use Card Stripe to create gold. He's able to use Pickpocket, Cole. And with that, you're able to see what he is able to do so incredibly well here. And I gotta say, just very impressed that he was able to take it so far with this deck list and show us what it is able to do here. Again, very impressed by all of that. And still, at the same time, I'm keeping a close eye on this deck list because it is definitely one that I am going to maybe be testing. I still do definitely agree that there is a big risk here with Nocturne. Because, again, the last thing that you ever want is to be able to, top deck that. But even still, very impressed with what is able to be had here. Or he does have seals. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, don't roast me in the comments. Sorry, I missed that. He does have the seals in his deck. He is running 3. Okay, good. So he is going the full miracle build. And so, again, though, very, very special build here. And also showing off that GG Teemo. Come on. I mean, rightfully so. If you are running that, you might as well go all in on that. Great choice there. But you're able to see, just how difficult this is going to be. Now that the signature spell is able to come in, that's going to be minusing 2 from something. Cool. That's perfectly fine. Now I'm going to be +4ing, and then a switcheroo being played out from hand on Speci there to immediately try to mitigate that. Now there is going to be the deflect cost from the Irelia, but still very big fan of what Speci was able to do with his showing here. And again, really great job. He was able to secure the top Teemo metal card in this point. So again, guys, I don't want to say like that Draven is the be-all end-all. He's that tier 0. Yes, still very powerful. But at the same time, we're looking at all of these different gameplays. We're looking at all of what everyone is able to bring. And there's something there. Aurora was able to do so incredibly well in these matchups. We were able to see Ezreal be able to make it into the finals. We were able to see Dravens be kicked out of the top 8s. So what's Vegas going to be having in tail for us? What is going to be able to make it into that top slot? I'm going to be curious to see what kind of adjustments we make. A lot of knowledge was found here today from months and months of testing of those adjustments made, of what Alan has been able to make from a very special deck tech. What we were able to see from Dazzling Aurora, that regardless of how much gear destruction there is out there, that there still is a place for MF Aurora, for Dazzling Aurora in general. That's insane to be able to consider. This meta feels like that it is still incredibly healthy, that there still is a lot to be explored here. And I am very excited to see what the following months have in store for us in this great game that is Riftbound. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for being here, and until next time, have a good one.